I didn't want to move here.
We couldn't afford to live in the old house anymore. Plus, the new story I'm writing is here.
Is the story a good one this time?
I'm gonna write the best book that anybody's ever read. I got a really good feeling about this. You gotta be kidding me. Family hanging out, barbecue 79. That's the family who lived here.
You think these are serial murders?
I don't know. First one I found dates back to the 60s.
The only link between all these cases is this symbol.
I've never been onto something this big before.
Sweetheart, what are you doing?
Painting. I wanted to paint her picture.
Who are you talking about?
Stephanie. She used to live here.
What's the matter? What's happened?
Take the kids, pack the car. We have to leave here now.
So that should have been some of the trailer for Sinister. This is the new film from director Scott Derrickson, written by writer-reviewer C. Roger Cargill, and it stars Ethan Hawke as a true crime novelist who has a family. He has a wife and 2 children, and they've just moved into a new house in a neighborhood that has featured some trauma. The trauma involves...
No, it's not really a new house.
Okay. They've moved into a house in a neighborhood that experienced trauma. The trauma of question is seen very early at the beginning of the film, where a family was brutally murdered. The catch is that Ethan Hawke has moved his family into the very same house that this family was murdered in. And
Dun, dun, dun.
I know, and his goal right now, a little unbeknownst to the rest of his family. And Ethan Hawke's goal, he is a writer, he's trying to basically solve missing aspects of the case, which include the family that was murdered. Not all of them were murdered. The little girl of the family was actually taken. So he wants to basically kind of put all the clues that he's assembled himself together and write a novel based on this, and hopefully, have it become a bestseller, as well as possibly solve a crime kind of thing. He's done this previously before, which has kind of driven him a little nutso in the past, but anyway, in doing this, while living in the house, he uncovers a box of Super 8 films. Watching those Super 8 films, he discovers that there's been a lot of grisly murders, and they all find some connection eventually. But, getting ahead of myself, Maxwell, what did you think of Sinister?
I thought Sinister was fine. I think that there were 2 elements that made the film, one of which I really liked, one of which I thought was fairly terrible. So to talk about what I really liked, I think as a character study, and as sort of an exploration of one man's unhealthy obsession, it's fairly effective. I think Ethan Hawke is one of these actors who can get really sort of twitchy and creepy in all the right ways, and he's really, really terrific in this movie. He anchors it strongly, and you're kind of on the edge of your seat with him. But then at the same time, when it starts becoming more of a pretty standard ghost movie, it lost me with a lot of obvious and stupid moments, bad jump scares, and I thought unnecessary, without spoiling anything, tropes of things I've seen just too much in like the last 10 years of horror movies. So it was like 50-50 for me, which was kind of disappointing.
Alan?
Well, first off, I was really disappointed because I thought it was going to be a modern retelling of Mr. Sinister, the X-Men villain. It was not. I was very upset. I was just waiting for Dr. Essex to pop up on the screen. It just wasn't it.
X-Men Origins, Mr. Sinister.
Yeah, that's what I was waiting for, and it wasn't it at all, and it just looks terrible. But anyway, then I watched the film, and I thought the first 2 acts were really expertly crafted. I really liked it. And then, it's a horror film, so then the 3rd act just kind of ruined it for me. Plus, Mr. Sinister, or Mr. Boogie, or Boogie, he looked like a roadie for Slipknot. Like, I'm gonna wear a really long dress coat, have long hair, and like a cool mask.
I'm also a cinephile.
What's
I'm
that?
also a cinephile.
Yeah, honestly, the first 2 acts of the movie were really cool. And then I ended up watching it with my friend, and there's a scene where you keep hearing, like, because the camera, like the videotape,
Yeah, this is a Super 8 film, yeah.
My friend made a joke because, clearly you guys have seen it, when you kind of hear those loud creaks in the attic, my friend made the joke, it's like, that's just Mr. Sinister trying to put the camera away in the attic and falling over every time. Because he keeps moving around. I thought it was really funny. It made me laugh. It was fine. I just didn't like the ending. Because it just, I don't know, just seemed lazy. And honestly, for a film that was paced where it's like, okay, clearly you know what you're doing. You've seen enough horror movies where you're wanting to write this and you're really coming into your own. It seems like the production just kind of succumbed to every cliche in the last 15 minutes. It's like, I know we're trying really hard not to do everything, but here you go. I'm going to give you everything in the last 10 minutes. So, I was really upset. And Ethan Hawke's sweater looked really comfortable.
It did.
Right?
Elbow patches?
Yeah.
Right, the elbow patches, just the pattern. I like that sweater.
It was a sweet sweater, I agree.
Yeah, it looks pretty warm.
I have that sweater in green. I wear it all the time.
Awesome.
Does this mean that you're going to find a box of Super 8 millimeters in your attic?
Nobody is.
I did, but it was just old episodes of The Facts of Life.
Abe, what did you think of
It's
this?
pretty scary, but
So,
I'm not being haunted by Lisa Wetzel or however you say her name. Helcho.
Abe, what did you think of the movie?
I thought that it was one of those slow burn movies where it's intense in terms of the first, second act, and the third act was kind of strange because I think that there wasn't really a conclusion as to my own questions of, are these children helping him? Are they hurting him? And the other question of, what's the deal with Bagul? What's the deal with him? Like, I don't understand how he was able to influence a certain character in this movie to do these things. So those 2 questions I think they're still pretty open. I don't think there's really any conclusion to that. But I did like the tension in terms of, Ethan Hawke continuously being so caught up in trying to write this new book that he starts to drink, and people don't really take that into account. But it's one of those things where, as his character progresses deeper and deeper into this, maybe it's like some kind of psychosis of him hearing this projector, but at the same time, it's actually happening, and that's what makes it, I think, effective in terms of you thinking about, like, is he just going crazy, or is he really being haunted? And you know that it's a little bit of both, but more so being haunted. But again, the whole entire notion of what's up with the demon in the movie, I don't fully understand.
Ooh.
Yeah, and I'm not gonna lie, those tapes, they were hilariously, like, ironically named, I should say. But one of the tapes was worse than all the others, and I think that's the last one that he saw, and I kind of didn't see that coming, and even I jumped on that one. And I do want to say, this is, in all honesty, C. Robert Cargill is a part of the Spill.com podcast crew, and that's actually the motivation for me wanting to start up the Out Now podcast with Aaron and Abe. So thanks, Spill crew.
So,
Abe, you're kind of saying thanks, but no thanks.
Abe, you get to the main issue that I have with this movie, which is C. Robert Cargill. That's the reason I wanted to see this movie, because I knew he wrote it, and because he's, a big horror fan and a writer and someone that understands, film and knows how to critique them, I felt like he would be able to avoid a lot of trappings of a horror movie of this type. And the issue I have with the movie is that he doesn't. There's a lot of really bad scenes of, like, Ethan Hawke running around in the dark, refusing to turn on any kind of light, using very small amounts of light sources, and just, like, acting like a stock character in a horror movie. And I feel like someone like Cargill could have avoided having those kinds of scenes, but they still exist. That said, I did like the movie overall. I think it has this great atmosphere to it that makes it really effective in being a scary movie, regardless of the jump scares, which there are many of, which do feel lazy when they come about. But just the sense of dread that you get from watching the movie, I think, is effective enough to make it worth recommending overall. The Super 8 films that are shown in this movie, I think all are very, not just like stylish, but very creatively creepy in how they're filmed and what they're showing and how they're not necessarily crazy graphic, but you get a sense of like, oh, this is terrible. Like, I don't want to watch this at all.
Right. And
I also think Ethan Hawke is very good in this movie, and this is like his first like big horror movie. Like, he's never done a horror movie before, besides maybe Daybreakers, which I don't think really counts. Like, I think he's very solid in this lead role. And what I liked about his performance and just kind of some of the story in general is that if you take away the horror element, it's a fairly compelling drama about what Alan was saying about a character who, was Alan saying that, or was Maxwell saying that? It's just that,
if it's smart, I'll take credit.
Maxwell was saying that.
I'm pretty sure it was
I think
me.
it was I believe it was Maxwell, yeah. About just a character dealing with obsession and, getting in kind of fights with his wife about what he's trying to accomplish with writing, both being a best-selling author and possibly discovering, like, solving a mystery. Like, it's kind of an interesting study in that sense. So, like, I really liked what Ethan Hawke was doing in this movie, and I really liked the score of this movie too. I really liked the score quite a bit. But yeah, I had issues with the kind of stupid character decisions made, and then the ending bothered me. I feel like the more that was revealed to me, the less I was kind of with the movie in general. The more I learned about the Ghoul with Vincent D'Onofrio literally Skyping it in, the less I was
unprecedented too.
Yeah, the less I was intrigued about the movie overall.
But I will say that I do agree with you on the score, especially during the times where Ethan Hawke is watching the 8mm films. Those are creepy little tone scores. But I do disagree that. What was your second point that I was going to say? Ethan Hawke actually. There's explanations why he's walking around in the dark with just his iPhone light, though. It's later revealed that the power goes out in like the neighborhood.
There's one scene where the power goes out, but there's a lot of scenes where he could have turned on a light or did anything else besides walking around in the darkness with just his phone as a flashlight.
That's true, yeah. Especially like when he's waking up at 3 a.m. and he's like, well, what's that noise? I guess I could turn on all the lights. I mean, I have a bigger problem with that in the next movie we're going to review. But yeah, I thought that it was serviceable. But again, the ending is weak in terms of I don't fully understand. I mean, how did this one character get to this point?
I wish I had understood less, actually, and I think this is kind of what Aaron was alluding to, is me personally, when it comes to scary things, I think the unknown and the unexplained tends to be scarier than some sort of half-baked explanation as to what exactly is going on. And I think in horror, ambiguity can be a really effective tool. And one of the things that I think Sinister did that made it lose its way is try to over-explain everything that happened. I don't think the reveals in the final act were necessary. I think we could have connected the dots, and it would have been probably scarier and more effective on its own.
Yeah, I agree with that a lot. I mean, there comes a point where you're getting all this information, and it just, when you get to a certain point in the movie and you're like, well, one thing, I kind of jumped to the conclusion when I heard certain things, and I don't tend to do that, but I was like, well, I guess I know where this is going now, and I was kind of upset just because I knew exactly what was going to happen. And so getting there, I was like, well, that's not satisfying, because then I had more questions because it gave me so much to work with. I'm like, well, what does that mean overall? Like, so I found a lot of issues with where the end went. I guess I can commend the film on, in leaving me with like a sense of like, oh, well, I don't feel good after this. I mean, that's like, it doesn't try to cap it off with a pat happy ending, but so that's, I guess, nice or something. The R rating, I guess I admire the movie isn't like crazy gory necessarily. Like, it doesn't go for like super hardcore gore stuff. It's more just there's a lot of, not necessarily implied. Well, there's a lot of implied things, but like there's dark elements going on without resorting to like seeing just the craziest possible gore. Yeah.
So
except for one scene.
You're saying it's dark?
Yeah. Thank you.
Would you call it Sinister?
Yes, I would call it Sinister. But yeah, I mean, again, I really, like, I like the movie overall enough to recommend for people that want to see a scary movie during the Halloween season. I think it's worth going to theaters to check this movie out. I think it captures the atmosphere well. I think, Scott Derrickson, who directed the movie, he previously did the Exorcism of Emily Rose, and he did that terrible Day the Earth Stood Still remake. But,
which I don't blame him.
I don't blame him for either, and I've actually heard him on another podcast recently, and there's a Q&A after Sinister too, and I wouldn't blame him for the Day of Yours still at this point. I blame Jaden Smith for that movie, but I liked his direction in this movie for the most part. Like I liked there's a lot of like long tracking shots that were admirable. There's his work with the composer for the film that made the score. I really like this. The score is really good. I do like. I got the score at this point. It's this crazy industrial kind of untraditional score that I think really helped set the movie apart from other movies. Like it worked.
Yeah,
great.
I definitely agree with that. I'm all for taking chances with scores, especially in horror. You get kind of tired of hearing the same, strings and low bass rumble. The kind of almost primal chanting that they used in some scenes in this was definitely disturbing.
Yeah, I was actually listening. I was listening to the score and reading the newest. I got the hardcover of the newest Walking Dead copy, and I was listening to the score at like midnight while reading it. I was like, "Oh, this isn't working," so I just stopped doing it.
A bad idea.
So, yeah, this wasn't good at all. But okay. So just to wrap it up, so we can get to our next movie. Let's get to our rating. Each week we try to rate movies based on when you should go and see them. And we have a scale that goes from IMAX to theater to dollar theater, Netflix, HBO, TV, or just kind of forget about it. Maxwell, where would you put Sinister on that scale?
I would do Netflix. Watch it at home with the lights off. I wouldn't go to the theater.
Alan?
Theater, dollar theater.
Okay.
Because even though it kind of falls apart at the end, the first two acts were really well made and creepy, and really, I actually really was enjoying myself in the first part of the film in the theater.
I agree with you, Alan, so I'll just echo those thoughts. But Abe?
Yeah, I'd say dollar theater as well. Yeah, dollar theater, and I think spoilers here. If you want to avoid some of the scare moments, watch the Red Band trailer. It's all there.
Yeah, Jesus. See, that's why I didn't watch the Red Band trailer, and I'm happy because of it.
Yeah.
I didn't watch the trailer at all. I just kind of walked in.
Yeah, well, I was kind of bummed out that they showed so much in the Red Band, or even in the Green Band.
Green Band's not as bad. Like I would.
Yeah, I think there's only like one thing in the attic.
All right, so let's do a little movie callback.
Call back.
This is where we mention a few films that kind of reminded us of the film we watched. So with that said, I'll just start with this. Insidious was a movie that was coming to mind quite often because that was the horror movie I really liked from last year, and this is from a producer of Paranormal Activity and Insidious, but I mean it still had a similar kind of like there's something going on in this house kind of premise thing, and I liked Insidious more, and that's kind of the movie I was hoping this would measure up to. And while it didn't quite do that, it still was effectively scary in the ways that it tried to be. I also thought of Poltergeist. And Cabin in the Woods came to mind because it's ruined horror movies for me. So.
Or made them ultra better. I don't know what you're talking about.
Alan, why don't you go while we're...
Well, let me think. Super 8, because a lot of Super 8 is involved. Zodiac a lot because of the tying into the murders and everything. I thought that was kind of cool. The Wire, because Ziggy's in it.
Yep. Yeah, The Wire's in it.
Yeah, I was like, that's cool.
I honestly could not, I could not place it until, after I was like, why do I know this detective?
Oh, no, I got it for, Ziggy's
I didn't,
That's what I got.
I completely blanked on it. I could not think. I was like, what is this guy in?
I'm really impressed.
Oh, dude, I had it.
Actually, Ziggy, he provided a good, the movie's very serious, and I was happy that he provided some levity.
Some kind of relief in it.
But he's not exactly like a fool.
I know, yeah, that's why
It's really kind of cool.
Yeah, he brought some good spirits to the movie.
Oh, The Shining. I kept thinking of The Shining.
Mm-hmm.
Not, clearly not as good as The Shining, but I kept thinking about it.
Maxwell?
Yeah, The Shining was the movie I was going to say. Sinister kind of feels like the Stephen King novel that Stephen King never wrote. Particularly because many of its protagonists are writers, and just something about the way that Ethan Hawke's character, and I can't remember his name. I just remember the character has the most ridiculous name. The way he sort of, yeah, exactly, becomes unhinged throughout the movie kind of reminds me of Jack Nicholson in The Shining.
Also because the ending is terrible, just like many Stephen King novels. Gabe?
Yeah, Insidious, Sixth Sense, and also Pet Cemetery. Only for one scene in Pet Cemetery where I think like the mom closes the refrigerator and there's like the dead guy that the daughter's been talking to is like standing there. Because there's like this really cool tracking scene in Insidious where in Sinister where Ethan Hawke is just like walking through his house and weird stuff happens to him.
All right. Okay, so that's our Sinister review.
Wait, before we move on, when they moved into the house where the murders took place, and then they moved back home, how big of a contrast is that in square footage?
Yeah.
Like, that is ridiculous.
Yeah.
They live in, like, Wayne Manor.
Like, what is that,
what
man?
I liked about the house that they moved into is that it didn't feel like a haunted house. It just felt like a regular house.
Regular house in Connecticut.
It felt like a, random house. Which is
yeah.
And that's something I admire about Insidious too, where like they move out of the house they first move in, which like feels like an obvious haunted house, and they move into a different house, which is like, all right, well this house can't be haunted, and then crazy shit happens anyway. That's why I like Insidious quite a bit. But yeah.
Oh, one last thing also. I was actually really annoyed by the use of hanged and hung.
Thank you. I can't believe.
Yeah, they kept on saying hung, and it's like people are not hung, people are hanged, and so they said it like 5 times. I was like, come on, you guys are writers, come on.
About the hatred I have for that every time I saw it. It was like, it's hanged. This is the worst thing about the movie. I completely forgot to bring this up.
Alex, I'm sorry. Yes.
I know from personal experience that a person can be hung.
Thank you. Okay, Abe,
thank you for that. That was excellent.
I am so happy Abe
I will not talk for 5 minutes.
Abe, I am so happy you brought that up, because that was driving me nuts in the movie, too.
Yeah, that actually drove me nuts,
like
too.
Just one time, too. They kept saying it.
Yeah, it repeatedly did it. I think the wife did it in a diatribe, like, at least, like, twice, and I was like,
yeah, the word usage is hanged.